All right, for more analysis on this now, let's talk to James Corbett, the editor of the independent news website, The Corbett Reporter. Thank you for joining us on RT today. The UK and the US both increasing their presence in the region. Is it a coincidence this is happening, do you think, in China's backyard?
Well, not only is this not a coincidence, I think this must be the perfectly predictable result of the shifting of the focus of American attention and the attention of much of the world to the Asia-Pacific region, as Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was saying last year at the APEC conference, that Asia-Pacific was going to be increasingly the focus of the world's attention in the 21st century, as China obviously continues to be an economic powerhouse, and even India and other countries in the region threaten to actually become more economically dominant. I think with that comes the attendant attention from the militaries of the US and the UK and other countries that I think are obviously looking to get...
You're suggesting some form of economic war games here. But if I may, North Korea, as we all know, is poised to carry out a highly criticised rocket launch, with its immediate neighbours expressing grave concern. Perhaps an increased UK and US presence is needed in the region.
Well, that's a matter of perspective, but I think once again, I think absolutely the perfectly predictable result of North Korean aggression and the way that they're really threatening people in the region with this satellite launch, and is something that would seem to necessitate some sort of response. But whether military response is really necessary, well, that would only come into play if North Korea was really doing some sort of suicidal attack, where they were actually going to use this as some sort of cover for launching a surprise attack on South Korea or something ridiculous like that, which would obviously be suicide for the regime. So I couldn't imagine that would be the case, but that would be the only situation developing from this that I could think would involve some sort of massive military intervention or need for military presence in the region.
Well, you talk about some, conspiratorial idea about, North Korea perhaps bearing down on South Korea. We know that the US is planning to deploy over 2,000 troops to Australia. It's also constructing a new naval base in South Korea. With China being the biggest holder of US debt in the world, their economies are intertwined. Could you see some form of intimidation going on here, if indeed the West is increasing its military presence in the Asia-Pacific?
Well, that's what's happening at a surface level. But as you say, the intertwining of the economies is an interesting feature of all of this that makes the idea of outright military confrontation, I think, less likely. And to a certain extent, perhaps this type of military aggression is played up as a way of milking more money out of the American taxpayers, for example, in order to fund the American military machine and to justify a new type of battlefront, when I think the actual danger of outright military confrontation, again, remains quite low, unless China was to do something, again, quite major, like try to retake Taiwan or something like that, which would obviously upset the balance of power quite greatly. So again, we can see these kind of build-up happening, but whether that will actually boil over into real military confrontation remains quite unlikely at this point, I'd say.
Well, as we know, Prime Minister Cameron now in Japan, talks of this possible massive exchange of military hardware going on. Obviously, UK looking to benefit on that. There's talk the UK may deploy a royal submarine to the Asia-Pacific waters. And as you probably know, in recent months, the UK has been making massive slashes to its military budget. Do you think it can truly afford to dispatch one of its most powerful submarines all the way to the Asia-Pacific?
Well, that question implies that that dispatching a submarine to the Asia-Pacific would be a drain on the resources, rather than a way of trying to, in a way, put some sort of commercial, some sort of advertisement out there for the Royal Navy and the need to expand that base. So it might be a type of ploy on the government's behalf to try to show that there's some sort of need to perpetuate the Royal Navy and to increase the funding for it while slashing other budgets. So I mean, in a certain sense, it might be a type of PR operation. But of course, we'll have to see how that really plays out and whether or not they even decide to commit that submarine.
James Corbett, editor of the independent news website, The Corbett Report. Thanks for coming on RT.
You're welcome.